Europe on the brink, 10 countries facing collapse in 2025. Europe stands at a crossroads. Beneath the surface of prosperity and peace, cracks are forming, and they're growing louder. 10 countries, each with their own legacy, are now dancing dangerously close to collapse. In 2025, the stability of Europe may be tested in ways we haven't seen in decades. At the Journey of Wisdom, we believe no nation is too strong to stumble, and no warning sign should be ignored. While the world often assumes developed countries are immune to chaos, history whispers a different truth. Economic strain, political division, social unrest, these forces don't ask for permission before they strike. And when one domino falls, others may follow. In today's video, we'll explore which 10 European nations are standing on shaky ground and why the world should be paying close attention. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like the video, share it with those who need clarity in uncertain times, and subscribe to the Journey of Wisdom. And if you feel called to support our work, your comments, likes, and generous super thanks help us continue bringing deep, mindful insights into the global events shaping our future. Now, let's walk the tightrope together and see which nations may be nearing the edge. Number 1. Turkey. Turkey stands at a critical crossroads, caught in a storm of internal and external pressures that are reshaping the very foundation of its modern identity. Over the years, its involvement in regional conflicts, especially those that have pooled resources, divided public opinion, and heightened geopolitical tensions, has placed it in an increasingly precarious position. Once a key player and bridge between East and West, Turkey now finds itself more isolated from traditional allies, with its relationships with NATO and the European Union becoming more strained by the day. These diplomatic tensions are not just political, they ripple through the economy, discouraging foreign investment and fueling public uncertainty. Meanwhile, the nation grapples with soaring inflation, a depreciating currency, and widespread unemployment, creating a sense of economic unease that weighs heavily on everyday citizens. Layered on top of these issues is the growing political repression, where dissent is often silenced and democratic institutions feel increasingly fragile. As trust erodes and frustration grows, Turkey's society teeters between resilience and resignation. In many ways, what Turkey faces is a reflection of what can happen when a country loses balance, between economic growth and social justice, between global ambition and internal harmony, and between authority and freedom. For those of us observing from afar, there is both a warning and a lesson. A nation's strength doesn't come only from its military or economic output. It comes from the well-being of its people, the freedom to express different ideas, and the ability to adapt with humility in times of crisis. As modern citizens, we must remember that no country is immune to collapse if the voices of its people are ignored and the needs of the vulnerable are dismissed. At the same time, history shows us that with courageous leadership, societal unity, and honest reflection, collapse is not destiny. It is a turning point that can lead to renewal. So as we look at Turkey, let's not just see a nation in trouble, but a mirror showing us how important compassion, accountability, and shared purpose are in shaping a better future, not just for one country, but for all of us. And as always, your perspective matters. If this stirred something in you, concern, hope, or even disagreement, share it below. The more we learn from each other, the wiser we become. Number 2, the United Kingdom. Let's take a closer look at the United Kingdom, a nation that was once known as a powerful symbol of financial stability and global influence. But today, the UK finds itself standing at a crossroads, caught in the long shadow cast by Brexit. The decision to leave the European Union was historic, but its aftermath has been anything but smooth. Trade routes that once flowed freely have become tangled in red tape. Labour shortages have hit key sectors like agriculture and healthcare, and inflation is squeezing everyday people, leaving many struggling to keep up with rising prices for food, energy, and housing. The cost of living crisis isn't just a headline, it's something families feel at the dinner table, at the gas station, and in their daily choices. Can a country truly thrive when its people are just trying to survive? Now, let's talk politics. Not always a comfortable topic, but one that matters. The UK has seen a whirlwind of leadership changes in recent years, with prime ministers coming and going in what feels like the blink of an eye. Each change brings new promises, but also fresh waves of uncertainty. Party divisions and internal conflicts have left many citizens wondering who is really steering the ship. And in the midst of this confusion, vital public services, like the National Health Service and transportation systems, are under pressure. Staff shortages, underfunding, and strikes have become frequent headlines, and it's no surprise that frustration is growing across the country. But perhaps one of the most pressing questions on people's minds is about unity. Scotland, fueled by dissatisfaction and a desire for greater control over its own destiny, is pushing once again for an independence referendum. This move reopens old wounds and adds another layer of uncertainty to an already complicated picture. If Scotland were to break away, what would that mean for the future of the United Kingdom as a whole? Is the very identity of the nation at risk? All these factors, economic instability, political uncertainty, and rising social tensions, are forming a storm that the UK must now face. Yet, in the midst of all this, one must ask, what kind of future does the United Kingdom want to build? Will it cling to the past, or find new ways to adapt and move forward? What values will guide its recovery? Resilience, cooperation, compassion. In this moment of challenge, there's also opportunity. The lessons here are not just for the UK, but for all of us. First, we see how deeply interconnected our choices are. Economic policy, political stability, and social well-being are not separate issues, but part of the same ecosystem. Second, we're reminded that true strength isn't just about power or history. It's about how a nation treats its people during times of struggle. And finally, we must remember that uncertainty isn't the end of the story. It's the space where real change begins. So ask yourself, how can a country reinvent itself when it feels like it's falling apart? What role do ordinary people play in shaping that future? The United Kingdom stands at a turning point, and the choices it makes now will echo for generations. Let's hope those choices are made with wisdom, courage, and a deep care for the well-being of all its people. Number 3, Greece. Imagine standing on the sun-kissed shores of Greece, where ancient ruins whisper stories of glory, philosophy, and democracy. But behind that breathtaking beauty lies a nation still healing from wounds that haven't quite closed. For years now, Greece has been trying to rebuild itself after the crushing financial crisis of the 2010s, a time when the economy teetered on the edge, austerity gripped the population, and hope felt distant. Yes, the country technically exited its bailout programs, but let's not mistake survival for recovery. The truth is, Greece's economy is still walking a tightrope. Its debt-to-GDP ratio remains alarmingly high, soaring above 170%, a level that leaves the country incredibly vulnerable to external shocks. It's like trying to sail a battered ship across unpredictable seas. Any storm could easily tip it over. And while there has been some economic growth, it's fragile, like a delicate flame flickering in the wind. Now, let's talk about tourism, Greece's crown jewel. For a long time, tourists flocking to Santorini's whitewashed homes and Athens' historic landmarks brought in vital income, but that dependence is also a risk. With the world facing increasing uncertainty, from global economic slowdowns to the growing impact of climate change and rising geopolitical tensions, tourism can no longer be counted on as a stable source of growth. One shift in global travel trends or a climate disaster could set the country back significantly. And while some parts of the economy try to move forward, another painful reality remains: unemployment, especially among the youth. Can you imagine being highly educated and full of dreams, only to find that your own country has no place for you? That's why many of Greece's brightest minds leave for other shores, creating a brain drain that slowly chips away at the nation's potential. On the political front, the road isn't much smoother. Greece is pulled in multiple directions, both from within and outside its borders. Internally, it faces social and political pressure to fix long-standing systemic problems, but solutions are often slow or compromised. Externally, the ongoing migration crisis adds a heavy strain to its already thinly stretched resources. Refugees seeking safety arrive daily, and while compassion is a virtue, so is capacity, and Greece is running low on both. Then, there's the ever-present tension with neighboring Turkey, particularly over contested areas in the Aegean Sea. These disputes aren't just about borders. They're about identity, security, and control. One spark in these tensions could light a much larger fire. As the Buddha once said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule." But in a world so caught up in power struggles, can such wisdom truly guide nations toward peace? So, where does that leave Greece? At a crossroads, perhaps, a place where every decision matters, where the past continues to echo and the future remains uncertain. Will the country finally break the cycle of hardship, or are we simply watching the calm before another storm? This is not just about Greece. It's about all of us, because in a world so interconnected, one nation's fall can become another's wake-up call. What do you think? Can resilience, guided by compassion and mindful choices, be enough to turn the tide? Or are we destined to keep repeating the same mistakes, hoping for different outcomes? Remember the words of the Dhammapada: "All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts." So I leave you with this. What kind of future are we thinking into existence? For Greece, for Europe, for us all. If you've watched up to this point, you're clearly someone who cares about the future of our world. Comment below with eyes open to show you're staying informed and ready for what's coming. Don't miss what's still ahead. We're about to reveal even more critical insights into the unfolding crisis across Europe. Stay with us to the end and discover what it could mean for you in 2025 and beyond. Number 4. Ukraine. Ukraine continues to stand at a difficult crossroads, burdened by the long-lasting effects of geopolitical tension and economic hardship that have gripped the nation since 2014. As we approach 2025, the strain from its ongoing war with Russia shows little sign of subsiding, leaving the country locked in a constant state of emergency. The devastation of infrastructure, the displacement of millions of its citizens, and the overwhelming cost of maintaining a defensive military posture have all combined to stretch Ukraine's economy to its breaking point. While the spirit of the Ukrainian people remains resilient and proud, this resilience comes at a heavy cost, especially for those trying to build their lives in the shadows of war. Streets that once buzzed with daily life are now lined with the scars of conflict, and hope, though still alive, flickers under the weight of uncertainty. The economy, though held afloat by foreign aid and international support, particularly from the IMF and European allies, remains fragile. It's like trying to row a boat in a storm with a patched-up sail. Survival is possible, but progress is painfully slow. Corruption, a long-standing issue within the government, continues to erode public trust and discourage the very investments Ukraine desperately needs to rebuild. Investors seek stability and predictability, but in a country where borders are under constant threat and political stability remains elusive, economic confidence falters. Inflation is high, jobs are scarce, and for many, putting food on the table has become a daily challenge rather than a given. These pressures weigh heavily on the average Ukrainian, who wakes up not knowing what tomorrow might bring. Not just in terms of war, but in terms of simple survival. Still, amidst this chaos, Ukraine's sense of national unity is something the world cannot ignore. Communities have banded together in ways that speak volumes about human resilience and collective strength. Local networks, grassroots organizations, and acts of everyday kindness have kept many afloat when official systems fail. This unity, however, cannot be the only answer. For Ukraine to avoid further collapse, the country must not only navigate its external conflict, but also face its internal issues head-on. Good governance, transparency, and a focused effort on long-term rebuilding, both physically and socially, are critical. The international community, too, must remain engaged, not just with weapons or funds, but with a long-term vision for peace and development. For those of us observing from the outside, especially in this age group of 30 to 65, Ukraine's struggle holds deeper meaning. It reminds us how fragile peace can be, how easily ordinary life can be upended by forces beyond our control. And yet it also teaches us that endurance, when rooted in unity and purpose, can carry a people through unimaginable hardship. As we navigate our own challenges, whether economic pressures, political uncertainty, or personal loss, there is wisdom in Ukraine's story. It calls us to value stability, to invest in communities, to cherish peace, and to recognize the strength that lies in staying grounded, even when the world shakes around us. Ukraine's future remains uncertain, but its journey reflects a deeper truth we all share, that in times of turmoil, it is not only survival that matters, but how we hold on to each other along the way. Number 5. Italy. Let's talk about Italy. Not just the romantic land of pasta, art, and ancient wonders, but a country that now finds itself wrestling with a storm of serious issues. Behind the charming villages and Renaissance beauty lies a modern reality that many don't see. Italy is struggling with one of the highest public debt levels in Europe, with a debt-to-GDP ratio soaring past 140%. That's not just a big number, It means the government owes far more than it can afford, and paying it back is getting harder as the years go by. The economy has been crawling for a long time, slowed down by red tape that makes starting or growing a business frustrating, taxes that weigh heavily on people and businesses alike, and a rigid labor market that doesn't leave much room for fresh ideas or new opportunities. When a country's system doesn't reward innovation or adapt easily to change, it becomes harder and harder for its people to thrive. But it's not just money problems. Italy's political scene is like a carousel that never stops spinning. Governments come and go so fast that long-term plans barely get a chance to begin before the next leadership takes over. This constant change creates confusion, stalls progress, and leaves people feeling disconnected and uncertain. The rise of populist parties has added to the divide, pushing people to take sides rather than come together. The result? A political stalemate where little gets done and the economy continues to suffer. And just when you think things couldn't get more complicated, Italy's banks, those lifelines of the economy, are still carrying a heavy burden of bad loans. If those banks falter, it's not just numbers on paper that crash, it's homes, jobs, and lives. Now take a moment to consider this. How does a country rebuild itself when its population is shrinking? Italy is facing one of the lowest birth rates in all of Europe. With fewer young people entering the workforce, the country's pension and social welfare systems are under strain. Who will support the aging population if the younger generation keeps shrinking? Immigration could be a natural answer, new energy, new workers, but instead of being embraced as a solution, it has become a battleground of ideology. Nationalist voices are growing louder, using fear and frustration to divide communities and create tension. This deepens the sense of social instability and pushes real solutions further out of reach. So let me ask you this: can a nation truly move forward when it is this divided, financially, politically, and socially? Italy's challenges are layered and complex, but within that complexity lies opportunity. The truth is, Italy isn't doomed, it's at a crossroads. The lessons from this situation speak to all of us. When systems become outdated, they must evolve. When leadership is unstable, unity and vision are more important than ever, and when a nation's people are pulled apart, healing begins with conversation, compassion, and courage. Italy's story is a warning, yes, but also a call to reflect. What happens when we don't address problems until they grow too big to ignore? And what becomes possible when we choose to come together, not just to survive, but to build something stronger for everyone? In the end, the message is clear. Whether it's a country or a community, we must not ignore the cracks in the foundation. We must be brave enough to face the truth, wise enough to seek solutions beyond division, and compassionate enough to care not just for our future, but for each other. Number 6. Serbia. Let's take a moment to talk about Serbia, a nation with a rich history, vibrant culture, and resilient people, but one that now finds itself standing at a crossroads, facing some serious challenges that could shape its future in 2025 and beyond. Imagine living in a country where your voice is harder to hear, where open debate is stifled, and where the media, instead of being a window into the truth, often feels more like a mirror reflecting only what those in power want you to see. That's the reality many Serbians are experiencing today under President Aleksandar Vučić's increasingly authoritarian government. The leadership style here has raised alarm not just within Serbia, but across Europe and the global community. Opposition voices have been pushed into the shadows, protests have been met with force, and media freedom has been shrinking at an alarming pace. When those in power become more interested in control than conversation, what happens to the trust between a government and its people? But political repression isn't the only storm cloud hanging over Serbia. Corruption remains a deep-rooted issue within state institutions, creating an environment where deals are often made behind closed doors and foreign investments come with heavy strings attached. While outside funding can bring in capital, infrastructure and jobs, many Serbians are left wondering who is truly benefiting from these deals, the country or just a powerful few. This mistrust is growing, especially among the youth. With unemployment rates among young people remaining painfully high, many are making the difficult decision to leave the country altogether, searching for opportunities elsewhere. This phenomenon, often called a brain drain, means that some of the brightest and most hopeful minds are packing their bags and taking their potential with them. What does it mean for a nation when its future leaders, innovators and dreamers feel like they have no place at home? Add to this the unresolved tensions surrounding Kosovo, a region whose status remains a deeply sensitive and divisive issue, and the picture becomes even more complex. Ethnic divisions and long-standing historical wounds continue to fester, fueling conflict not only within Serbia, but across the broader Balkan region. These tensions aren't just political. They touch the lives of everyday people, affecting relationships between communities, shaping national identity, and even influencing Serbia's relationships with neighboring countries and international bodies like the European Union. Can a country truly move forward when parts of its past are still haunting its present? And then there's the economy, a fragile structure teetering under the weight of inflation, limited job prospects, and growing inequality. For many Serbians, the promise of a better life feels just out of reach, and the hope that democracy would bring prosperity is fading. It leaves us with a powerful question. In a time when freedom, fairness, and opportunity seem so vital, how can a nation reclaim its sense of direction when the compass feels broken? So, as we look toward 2025, Serbia stands not on the edge of collapse, but on the edge of choice. Will its leaders choose to open the doors to reform, to listen more and control less, to invest in people rather than power? Or will the current path of repression, corruption, and instability lead to even greater uncertainty? What would you do if you were in the shoes of a young Serbian, watching your homeland struggle to breathe under the weight of its own challenges? The story of Serbia is far from over, and how it's written from here on out depends on the choices made today. Still with us, that means you're not afraid to question what's happening beneath the surface. Drop a future watcher in the comments to join others who are staying alert. Keep watching. What's coming next might just change how you see the world in 2025. Number 7. Poland. Poland, once seen as a shining example of how a nation could rise from the shadows of communism to become a democratic and economic success story, now finds itself caught in a troubling cycle of political unrest and economic instability. In recent years, the ruling Law and Justice Party, PIS, has taken steps that many within the European Union view as direct threats to democracy. These include moves to reduce the independence of the judiciary, tighten control over public media, and weaken the essential checks and balances that keep government power in line. Such actions have triggered serious warnings from the EU, including the threat of sanctions and the possibility of losing crucial funding. These developments have not only shaken Poland's standing within Europe, but have also sparked unrest at home. People have poured into the streets, protesting sweeping judicial reforms, harsh abortion laws and censorship creeping into the press. The nation has grown increasingly polarized, with many feeling that their freedoms and voices are being silenced in a system that seems to be moving away from its democratic roots. At the same time, Poland's economic landscape, once praised for its resilience, now shows signs of strain. While it has maintained steady growth and even outpaced some of its European neighbors, deeper issues are starting to surface. Inflation continues to rise, pushing the cost of living higher for everyday citizens. Energy shortages, especially in the wake of growing global instability and Europe's shift toward green energy, are beginning to affect households and businesses alike. Moreover, ongoing disputes with the EU over climate policies have placed the country in a delicate position, where failure to comply could mean losing out on vital support. As these pressures mount, Poland's path forward becomes increasingly uncertain. This is a moment of reflection, not just for the nation's leaders, but also for its people. The question Poland faces is not simply political, it is deeply human. How does a society protect its freedoms while navigating the realities of modern governance, economy, and global interdependence? In modern life, we can see reflections of Poland's situation all around us, at work, in our communities, and even within ourselves. When structures that once brought us stability begin to shift or feel uncertain, fear and division can easily take root. But this is also where awareness and courage are needed most. For the people of Poland, and for anyone observing from afar, this is a powerful reminder that democracy is not a finish line, but a living process, one that requires participation, accountability, and care. The same way we tend to our relationships, our health, or our work, we must also tend to the health of our shared systems. Whether we are voting, speaking up, or simply listening more deeply to others, each act of engagement helps steady the balance. Poland stands at a crossroads, yes, but so does every society that values freedom and dignity. And in our own lives, we too often reach similar turning points, where the choice lies between division or unity, fear or hope, decay or renewal. The hope is that by choosing understanding over conflict and long-term vision over short-term gain, both Poland and all of us can continue on a path toward greater stability, peace, and progress. Number 8. Spain. Let's talk about Spain, a country rich in culture, history, and passion, but one that's quietly grappling with deep internal challenges that could shape its future in serious ways. At the heart of this struggle is the long-standing tension in Catalonia. You may remember the 2017 independence referendum. It wasn't just a political event. It was a signal flare for a much deeper divide. Although it failed to gain legal recognition, it ignited something that hasn't faded. Even now, separatist parties in Catalonia continue to gain traction, demanding either more autonomy or full independence. These demands don't just stir emotions, they complicate national politics. When government leaders are constantly battling over regional power, it's difficult to pass effective legislation that benefits the whole country. This political deadlock slows down progress on critical national issues, and over time, it chips away at trust in the government itself. Now, layer this political tension on top of economic instability, and you start to see the full picture. Spain's economy leans heavily on tourism and construction, two industries that look strong from the outside but are deeply vulnerable. Tourism brings in billions, yes, but it's also one of the first industries to falter in times of global crisis, as we saw during the COVID-19 pandemic. Construction, once the heartbeat of Spain's growth, never fully recovered from the 2008 crash and still operates on shaky ground. These sectors may offer short-term gains, but they don't provide the kind of long-term stability a country needs to grow strong and united. So, here's the question. If the core of your economy can collapse in a moment, what kind of safety net do you really have? The youth in Spain are feeling this instability the most. Youth unemployment remains staggeringly high. Many young people are either jobless or stuck in temporary, low-paying work. This doesn't just hurt the economy, it creates a generation that feels disconnected, frustrated, and unsure about their future. What happens when an entire generation starts to lose faith in the system? What kind of future can a country build when its youth can't find their place in it? At the same time, Spain is facing serious environmental threats, especially from climate change. Desertification, when fertile land turns into desert, isn't just a far-off problem for Spain. It's already happening, particularly in the south, threatening the country's agriculture, which has been a backbone for rural communities and food production. Climate change doesn't care about political boundaries or party lines. Its impact is widespread, and it hits hardest where the land is already fragile. With all of these pressures, regional divisions, economic fragility, youth disillusionment, and environmental risk, Spain is at a crossroads. And so we ask, will Spain find a way to come together and face these challenges head-on, or are we witnessing the early signs of a deeper national fracture? How does a country heal when parts of it want to break away? How does it move forward when the foundation it stands on is unstable? This situation teaches us something powerful about unity and resilience. It reminds us that a nation, just like a person, must learn to balance its differences, care for its vulnerable, and invest in what lasts, not just what profits in the short term. Political will, economic wisdom, and environmental stewardship aren't just buzzwords, they're lifelines. For Spain, and for any country, the real strength lies not in how loud its voices are, but in how well they listen to one another, how deeply they support the next generation, and how wisely they prepare for a future that demands both courage and cooperation. Number 9. Germany. Let's take a moment to talk about Germany, a country often seen as the engine that drives the European economy. For years, Germany has been a symbol of stability, productivity, and innovation. But right now it's standing at a very precarious edge. Imagine a nation known for its precision manufacturing, powerful automotive industry, and strong exports, now grappling with a series of deep and complex problems, economic, demographic, and political. So, what exactly is going on in Germany, and why are so many experts worried about its future? First, let's look at the economy. Germany made a bold move by stepping away from nuclear energy, a decision rooted in environmental and safety concerns. However, this shift, combined with its heavy reliance on Russian gas, a relationship that has soured due to geopolitical tensions, has left the country in a vulnerable energy position. Now, energy costs have skyrocketed, and it's not just households that are feeling the heat. Entire industries, including manufacturing, chemicals, and the world-renowned automotive sector, are being squeezed. Some major companies are already thinking about relocating production to places where energy is more affordable. Can you imagine the ripple effects if Germany's industrial giants start pulling out? What would that mean for jobs, for the European supply chain, and for the global economy? But the challenges don't stop there. Germany is also facing a major demographic shift. The population is aging rapidly, and this is putting huge pressure on both the pension system and healthcare infrastructure. Fewer young people entering the workforce means fewer contributors to support the growing number of retirees. The question we all need to ask is, who will carry the weight of an aging nation? And how can a country remain economically competitive when its workforce is shrinking year after year? Now let's turn to politics, where things are becoming increasingly unstable. The far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD, is gaining momentum, fueled by public frustration over immigration, economic stress, and a perceived disconnect between everyday citizens and political elites. Their rise is not just about one party. It signals a deeper divide within German society. For decades, Germany has prided itself on being a bastion of democracy, moderation, and unity. But now, with polarization growing and trust in traditional institutions fading, even that political stability seems to be at risk. How does a society heal when its people feel unheard and divided? And when we bring all these threads together, an energy crisis, a shrinking and aging population, and rising political unrest, we're left with a sobering reality. Germany, once considered unshakable, is facing a very real identity crisis. Will it adapt and innovate, finding new paths to growth and unity? Or are we witnessing the slow unraveling of a European powerhouse? These are not just questions for economists or politicians, they're questions for all of us who care about the future of Europe and the balance of global stability. So I invite you to reflect. What lessons can we learn from Germany's current challenges? And how can other nations avoid falling into the same traps? Number 10. France. France, a country with a proud legacy of revolution and reform, now finds itself once again in the grip of deep unrest, and the signals of strain are impossible to ignore. While protests have long been part of the nation's identity, the intensity and persistence of recent movements reflect a deeper, more systemic problem. The Yellow Vest protests, which began as a response to rising fuel taxes, quickly evolved into a powerful and widespread expression of frustration toward economic inequality, elitist governance, and a sense of being unheard. This wave of discontent has not faded with time. Instead, it has grown more entrenched as pension reforms, perceived as unjust, and labor disputes, particularly around wages and job security, continue to divide the government and its people. These are not isolated events. They're expressions of a society grappling with change it did not choose, and with systems that seem increasingly out of touch with the average citizen's reality. Economically, France faces a mountain of challenges that threaten its long-term stability. Youth unemployment remains alarmingly high, leaving many young people disillusioned, anxious, and feeling left behind by a system that offers little security or hope. When a nation's youth cannot find meaningful employment, the future dims, not just for them, but for the entire country. Confidence in the economy wanes, spending slows, and the cycle of stagnation deepens. This is compounded by France's soaring public debt, now exceeding 110% of its GDP. Such a burden limits the government's ability to respond to economic shocks with the kind of robust public investment that could ease social pressure or spark recovery. In the event of another financial or health crisis, the nation may find itself without the tools to protect its people. Adding to this is the decline of France's industrial strength. Once a cornerstone of the nation's economy, The industrial sector has been steadily eroded by globalization and the relentless rise of cheaper foreign competitors. This not only threatens jobs, but also chips away at a sense of national pride and economic self-sufficiency. Factories that once sustained communities now sit empty, and with them vanish opportunities and the social stability that comes from steady work. At the political level, fragmentation has made effective governance increasingly elusive. With traditional parties losing influence, more extreme voices on both ends of the political spectrum are rising. This polarization makes consensus nearly impossible and creates an atmosphere of distrust, fear, and division. When people feel forced to choose between extremes, the center collapses, and so does the possibility of balanced, thoughtful policy. So what can we take from all this? France's troubles aren't simply political or economic. They're deeply human. They reflect a crisis of trust, identity, and belonging. For those of us watching from outside or living through similar frustrations in our own countries, the lesson is clear. When leaders stop listening, when inequality is ignored, and when economic progress leaves too many behind, unrest becomes inevitable. But there is also hope. Change, though difficult, is possible, especially when societies prioritize compassion, fairness, and genuine dialogue over conflict and control. The path forward for France and for many other nations standing at the edge lies in rebuilding connection between leaders and the people, between generations, and between ambition and empathy. As we've seen, even the most established nations are not immune to instability. Beneath the surface of modern progress lie complex challenges, economic, political, and deeply human. But collapse is not destiny. It's a crossroads, a moment that invites reflection, courage, and change. At the Journey of Wisdom, we believe awareness is the first step toward transformation. So if today's insights gave you something to think about, help us share that wisdom with others. Like this video, share it with your community, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss the deeper conversations and stories we bring to light. Thank you for walking this path with us. Until next time, stay mindful, stay compassionate, and stay curious.